I'm joined now by Republican Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis. She represents New York's 11th District. Congresswoman, good to have you. So let's start here with what we know. And of course, we haven't had the full rollout that comes tomorrow about the president's budget proposal, the deficit cut over 10 years, and these increased taxes on the wealthy and corporations. First thoughts?
Well, my first thoughts are that this needs to be a bipartisan approach. We now control 1/3 of the pie, Republicans, and we need to have the seat at the table. We believe that everything should be in discussion at this moment. However, to come right out of the gate and say you want to increase taxes on Americans, I think that's the wrong approach. There is a lot of wasteful spending in Washington. I mean, we just had a hearing where we talked about nearly $400 billion that was stolen by fraudsters and international organizations in COVID relief money. We see what is happening at our border, the amount of money that is being spent without actual border security measures taking place. We see from inspectors general across the board, different agencies coming out with recommendations on how tax we can save. You have a bunch of programs, by the way, that have not been reauthorized, that they have discretionary funding, and we never even discuss what is the merit of those programs. Are they accomplishing their goals, or is that money that could be shifted elsewhere? So I think the first thing that Republicans want is to look at cost savings measures. We want to make sure that we do not default, by the way. I'm very much committed to ensuring that that does not happen, but I also want to make sure that we are fulfilling our obligations in terms of Medicare and Social Security. So that leaves the discretionary funding, that leaves some other pots. But I think if we review Inspectors General's recommendations, that in itself could be a tremendous cost savings to the taxpayers.
Sure, let's talk about potential savings. The New York Times is reporting that House Republicans are relying on a framework built by former President Trump's budget director, and includes a 45% cut in foreign aid. You served on House Foreign Affairs in the last Congress. Could you back a 45% cut in foreign aid spending, which of the overall budget is about 1%?
Yeah, so, I say that there are certainly savings. I was actually the ranking member on International Organizations Committee, where we did oversee all that foreign aid. And quite frankly, there's a lot of money that's going overseas where we don't know where it's actually going. There are no metrics in place. And that was one of the things that I constantly brought up in our hearings. If you look at Afghanistan, for example, there were billions of dollars that were spent in Afghanistan, whether that be through the Department of State or whether it be by the Department of Defense, that went into areas where, they went to pay for ghost armies, for example, people that actually didn't exist. They built buildings that were never used. These are the types of concerns that we have with foreign aid.
Would you back a 45% cut to foreign aid?
I can't commit to a specific number right now. I don't think it's about just throwing a number out there. I think it's got to be specific. Where is the money going? Why is it going there? And is it fulfilling its purpose? But the truth is, there are countries that do not support us, whether it be the United Nations. There are countries that do not like us, and yet they still receive foreign aid. And I think that has to be examined. My whole thing is to make sure that money is going towards its intended purpose and is fulfilling its specific goal. And that is why I feel these Inspectors General reports is where we should be starting, because they point out the waste, they point out the fraud, they point out the abuse, and there is some cost savings to be had. But again, particularly with foreign aid, it needs to have a strategic purpose and a goal. And if we're not fulfilling that goal, then it should be looked to be cut.
Let's talk about this first hearing today of this COVID subcommittee. You had the former CDC director there. There has been this claim by Republicans that there is some cover-up of what the administration, this current administration, knows about the origins of COVID-19. What did you learn today?
Well, look, Dr. Fauci, who served in both the previous and the current administration, said quite clearly that he didn't believe that the lab leak theory was accurate. In fact, he commissioned scientists to prove otherwise. And it seems that he had put wrapped his head around this narrative of the natural origin and did everything he could to debunk the lab leak theory. But now it's coming to light. Republicans have been saying this for quite some time, that the lab leak theory is accurate and is most likely. And even we're seeing agencies within this administration confirming that, whether it be the FBI, whether it be the Department of Energy. And so what we're finding out here is that Dr. Fauci seemed to not want Americans to know that this was part of a lab leak. And quite frankly, it was a lab leak that came from the Wuhan lab, which, by the way, American tax dollars made their way there through the EcoHealth Alliance. And so what one of the witnesses, who was the former director, Dr. Redfield of the CDC, told us that not only was it American tax dollars that went there from NIH, but he believes it was from Department of State, he believes it was from the U.S. aid, he believes it was the Department of Defense. So when you talk about cutting foreign aid, that's an area where we should not be funding labs in communist countries that are adversaries to be doing gain-of-function research that could have developed this virus.
Well, Congresswoman, let me say this. Dr. Fauci has said that the U.S. has not funded gain-of-function research, but that's for him to answer. And speaking of answers, I read this memo that you all... Let me finish, because I'll give you a chance to answer.
Sure,
you all released this memo just a couple of days before this first hearing, and it's all about Dr. Fauci. You did not invite Dr. Fauci to answer these questions. Will you do that? And why not today?
Oh, I would love to. It's not my decision. It's the chairman's. I believe Dr. Fauci should be coming to the committee. I think the goal here is to question those around him first and follow those answers and facts to where they lead. And if it leads to Dr. Fauci, he should be coming forward before the committee, as should Peter Daszak of EcoHealth Alliance, which is where the money was funneled from NIH to EcoHealth, then to the Wuhan lab. But Dr.